Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. So on Twitter, Martin Viecha said for the shareholder meeting next year for Tesla, about 1 month in advance, if you want to go, you have to enter the lottery for a chance to get an invite. Or if you have a good following, you can try to get in as somebody's +1. Right now, those are the only two options. Martin did add, however, that they're looking into having it in a larger capacity area. However, the challenge with that is people would not be able to see the factory that way, which he thinks is one of the highlights. So for next year, when we get the official announcement date, just remember about 1 month earlier to mark that day on your calendar if you're interested. When it comes to the third-party audit that Elon spontaneously agreed to at the shareholder meeting, Elon said, "I will review the audit personally. If you drive a Tesla, you should be able to believe in it to your core." As a Tesla fan and investor, this is a narrative that I don't ever want us to forget. So back in 2008, Elon said he had one of the hardest decisions he ever had to make. Basically, Tesla and SpaceX, with everything going on in the economy, were on the brink of failure. Elon only had about $30 to $40 million left. He could either put that money into one and definitely save it and let the other one die, but because they're both like children, he decided to split the funds and try to save them both, taking the risk that they both might die. And then of all companies to step in and save the day, it was Daimler investing $50 million in Tesla, acquiring a 10% stake at the time, which today would be worth about $55 billion. But Daimler sold all of its Tesla shares before 2014 for less than $1 billion. Still a great return, but not nearly as good as it could have been. So honestly, the question can be asked, would Tesla exist today had Daimler not stepped in at the 12th hour and provided this funding? Because then the very next year, Tesla went to IPO. It had the backing of Daimler, who was way more valuable than Tesla at the time, and here we are some decade plus later. And how ironic would it be if Daimler, which was rebranded to Mercedes-Benz, ended up out of business because of that company it invested in back in 2009 to ultimately save it from bankruptcy itself. What's that quote Elon always says? Fate loves irony. Deutsche Bank analysts put out a Tesla stock note saying they were encouraged after their recent tour of Giga Texas and some meetings with Martin Viecha. The analysts were impressed with the plant, saying it was well designed and runs very efficiently. "We came away encouraged that Tesla could deliver cost improvements and efficiencies in the quarter ahead, which may help offset some of the pressures. But they're still worried about price cuts ahead into a weaker environment." And on the advertising front, Elon may have played it off like he decided that on the spot, but these analysts are saying after that meeting, this has actually been contemplated upon internally by the team for several months already. Not really a surprise. And from the conversation, Tesla believes its main advertising challenge is with auto consumers' awareness around battery life, charging capabilities, and durability. Things to watch for in the upcoming ads, if we do ultimately get them. Jay in Shanghai told us that Tesla invited him and other China-based content creators to go to Giga Shanghai for an exclusive tour, taking them behind the scenes. Of course, no photos or video were allowed in the factory, but he said it was an absolutely mind-blowing experience. And he shared this little thank you note apparently from the Tesla China team after the tour. Of course, looping in and including content creators into what you're doing to make them feel valued is only going to help Tesla in the long run, as these content creators will be looking at Tesla in a more favorable light and ultimately continue to receive more free advertising. If you watched my new look Tesla video earlier this week, you will have seen when Elon said there were some constraints in China where it was actually limiting Tesla's ability to expand production in the region. And at the time, I said I would love some more clarity on what that constraint is. Well, shout out to my guy Peter. He got a response from Woowa on YouTube, and here's what he said. "Yes, according to sources, unconfirmed, Tesla and the Chinese government have not been able to reach an agreement on the land lease. The problem is the way the land lease is done. One requires a loan from the other, and the other does not require a loan to pay for itself." Slightly confusing wording. Either way, due to this, the expansion project has been delayed, which is why the production line at Tesla's Shanghai plant keeps being upgraded. We hope that both parties can solve this problem as soon as possible. So potentially we have a negotiating or a posturing back and forth between Tesla and the Chinese government over the actual land lease required for the expansion in Shanghai or the surrounding area. Certainly seems like something that will be solvable in the future, but now we have something to watch for. Chuck Cook uploaded the video with the regression in FSD Beta 11.4.1 when it comes to narrow roads and that behavior, so I wanted to share a few quick clips of that behavior.
I am in the middle of the road with this oncoming truck. Do you see that? And now it's going over to the right and a complete stop. And then wow. And now it's going back to the middle of the road with this other oncoming car. And I have to disengage to get over to the right. Oh, and look at that. Wow. All the way to a stop. This is right about where that bus was on the other direction. Okay. Wow. Okay. And it stopped twice there. All the way to 0. This is going to be a short video because I don't need to really show you anything else.
So remember, this is a .1 release. Some regressions are to be expected here, but the good news is Elon liked the tweet where Chuck was highlighting this problem, and presumably the FSD team is aware of it and will be working to fix it. Reuters loves the slow drip of Tesla India information. India's Deputy Minister of Technology said they, Tesla, are very seriously looking at India as a production and innovation base. We've signaled to them the government of India is working together and will certainly make whatever ambitions they have or investment objective they have in India a success. When asked if these talks with Tesla included more than just autos, he said, "You don't talk about cars alone. You talk about cars, you talk about energy, you talk about manufacturing technology. So all of that figures into the conversation. What they will want to do in India, it's too far for me to tell and it's not for me to say." There you have it. For over a year now, GM has been saying that 2023 is going to be the year where their EV production really starts to take off, and that's heavily reliant on the Ultium battery production. Well, the time for GM to actually walk the walk rather than talk the talk is now here. Today, we get word that the upcoming Chevy Silverado WT work truck, which yes, is intended for fleet customers, will have an EPA estimated range of 450 miles, much more than the original 400 number that was thrown out. And they're saying this truck will start at $79,800, including shipping, which yes, would be under that $80,000 cap for trucks for the IRA incentives. Sticking with this work truck for now, it is actually expected to launch this spring, so essentially in the next few weeks, and later other versions of the work truck line will follow, starting as low as $41.5 thousand, including shipping. The next variant release will also be a work truck with a GM estimated 350 miles of range and a starting price of $74.8 thousand. Then for retail buyers later this fall in 2023, they're expecting to launch the RST Rally Sport Truck version of the Chevy Silverado with an estimated 400 miles of range and a price of $106.7 thousand. Bear in mind, this is GM estimated, not yet EPA estimated. They're touting DC fast charging capabilities up to 350 kilowatts, and of course, they'll be capable of charging another EV or powering tools on the worksite, all of that good stuff. We have Rory Harvey, the North American president of GM, saying Cadillac is on track to reveal 3 new EVs this year. To that, I would say, let's start with the Lyriq, ramp up that production a bit, but he also said the availability of semiconductor chip parts has improved. A few things to keep in mind here. If GM can hit these specs, then yes, it would basically have a pickup truck on the market with a range of about 100 miles greater than any of its closest competitors. Rivian R1T, Ford F-150 Lightning, they're both between the 300 to 350 miles of range depending on configuration. Second, on the pricing front, let's not forget what just happened with Ford and the F-150 Lightning. At launch time, when there's all the media hype and the press coverage, they come out with a price that's much lower than where the F-150 Lightning is priced today. So can GM really make money selling this vehicle for less than $80,000 when doing any sort of math, you're going to need a battery pack size between 180 and 200 kilowatt hours to hit these figures listed. Let's say the F-150 Lightning gets about 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour, which of course will vary depending on many situations, but just using that efficiency and expecting that GM isn't going to blow that out of the water, that would give us a battery pack size of 195 kilowatt hours for the Silverado to hit that 450 miles of range. Then we have to ask the question, how will dealers handle having limited availability of this initial variant? What will the markups look like, if anything? Because right on their website, they're saying very limited initial availability starting spring 2023. Look, I'm not trying to cut down GM here. I'm just bringing up some things to consider for this vehicle as we hear promises, and then when it comes to production, things don't always pan out as they thought. But if they can pull off 450 miles of range for less than $80,000, I tip my cap. With almost perfect timing, we get the Munro video on the Hummer battery pack, which uses these Ultium cells and gives us an idea of what we might see on the Chevy Silverado. The weight on this battery pack for the Hummer EV was 2,500 pounds with over 3,500 welds because they chose to use the cheaper steel rather than aluminum. So Mary is definitely leading the EV transition in welds per kilowatt hour. In fairness, though, it wasn't all just about excess from the Munro team. Have a listen.
They did package this very well, even though it is a massive pack.
Right. I mean, for the most part, the numbers most people focus on when they're designing these is watt hours per liter and watt hours per kilogram. And I mean, it's not horrible on either of those. So
here's a quick shot of a module, which each one contains about 24 of these Ultium cells right here.
The 4680s are 22 amp hours. This guy is 103 amp hours, so there's a lot more energy just in this. So, I mean, that's what GM's big claim was. The Ultium cell was a new and great thing. All it really is a bigger gas tank. It just holds more. It's bigger. It's not really novel in any way. But the one that everyone forgets is miles per kilowatt hour. The Hummer is dead last in that one. I mean, we also have to separate trucks out from heavy-duty trucks versus...
Because this is effectively in a different weight class from almost every other vehicle we've torn down.
Right. But at the same time, the Rivian, it falls below the Lightning, which also speaks to efficiency and design.
And hey, at least GM is trying, which is more than we can say for some other companies. Interesting news story here in Phoenix. We have some local residents upset because what we have are Waymo vehicles that are actually parking between rides on public streets, which, yes, is actually legal.
Roberto Fritz and Jim Beal say that when these Waymos aren't working, they're idling in their Tempe neighborhood.
It's an intrusion into residential districts. These are commercial vehicles. They shouldn't be allowed to be in here. They should be parked at a commercial yard somewhere.
We spoke with Waymo and got this response. Waymo's ride-hailing vehicles use publicly available parking spaces when needed between trips. We do this because driving around without passengers would unnecessarily add to congestion and be an inefficient use of the vehicle. Also, parking locally as opposed to returning to a Waymo facility allows us to best match supply and demand to ensure that vehicles can arrive quickly when hailed. Once the vehicle is matched with another rider, it continues on its way.
Perhaps some interesting foreshadowing into this transition to our autonomous future. And lastly, just want to shout out this Southern California company, BTU, again for anybody new. This company takes end-of-life EV batteries from companies including Tesla, racks them together as is, and then connects them to solar panels. They become powered by solar and then discharge that energy onto the grid. These used EV battery packs can last for about 5 years in this use case, and then they can actually go to recycling after that. So just don't forget plug and play uses like this for EV batteries. So when you hear those FUD narratives about batteries going to landfills and it's going to ruin the earth, just keep this one in mind. If you're in the market for an inventory Model 3 in the United States, Tesla is currently offering $1,350 off. Maybe worth taking a look. You can find me on Twitter at DylanLoomis22. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video if you did, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.